Here we go again. We're talking about Matthew 24. Was Jesus talking about the last days, or is he talking about just getting out of Dodge? I have some wonderful, wonderful friends, actually wonderful people who are on this show, The Place. They make it magnificent, to say the least. I so respect them. I'm so thankful for them. With that said, welcome, Bob.
Well, hey, thanks. It's great to be here. And I'm here again. I look for my Hawaiian shirts, and you know what? I think I lost them all in the flood. But anyway, so to make up for it, I did bring myself some more arrogant bastard ale. Puts me in the right mood, you know? So good to be here.
Sounds great. I enjoyed the shirt tonight simply because, there is a character in the Bible who had some of this, these colors, and he made a bit of difference in people's lives. And so maybe we can do some of that tonight. Welcome, Daryl, to the show.
Thank you. It's always good to be here. And I couldn't find a Hawaiian shirt, so I found a real loud Texas shirt.
Here in Pensacola, we don't call this a Hawaiian shirt. It's very Floridian, if you know what I'm talking about. It's quite simple. But, to the topic at hand, many people come here simply to hear this and that. And tonight we're talking a bit of theology. And please understand, we don't want any of you guys to feel obligated to believe any of this stuff. It's simply packaged, namely a story. And so, with that said, I have to be honest with you. We're going to deal with a failed meta language, namely of theology. The gloss system is highly questionable. Dr. John Lee, he's one who has written extensively concerning this. Even Hall Harris agrees as well. There is much that we need to look at when it comes to the lexicons that are on today's market. And please note that what we have is English / Greek lexicons. And so that should tell you that we really don't have anything that really is reasonable, that is, to deal with all of the kinds of things that I keep talking about, simply because we do not possess all the linguistic and non-linguistic elements to be efficient, that is, concerning the intent of these various authors. And so since this is an inflected language, that is, the manuscripts were written in Koine Greek in particular, and there is a bit of it that is that one would have to back translate into a nominal structured language like Aramaic to see what has been actually articulated here. So it's not just something in Greek sense. And please understand the kind of First and Second Temple Hebrew and even the Aramaic that Jesus was speaking. It was a tenseless language. These were tenseless languages. And so when you look at the Greek, you have a language that's very tense-driven in a sense, but yet, you have a bit of yield here in trying to get a rendering. But we're going to forget all of that tonight. We're just going to deal with something simple. I'm picking up a Baptist favorite. It's actually quite red, in keeping with the shed blood of Jesus. And hopefully you've got all of your shed blood all over you, and hopefully it's made you sick enough to study this thing from time to time. But we're going to be looking at this Bible, yes, and we're going to be reading from an English Bible. I'm going to be reading from the Christian Standard. Okay, it's the Holman Christian Standard Bible. Many people are advocating this simply because it uses a dynamic approach. It's a combination of dynamic and direct modeling, form critical, I should say. In other words, people are trying to find meaningful equivalent by exchanging form for form, trying to find the same thing in the target language. And so it is what it is. And but I do not agree with most of the rendering here. However, just for the sake of having a discussion tonight, we're going to forget all about the particulars And we're just going to chat about Matthew 24. In Matthew 24, as so many people in church life are suggesting, is he talking about the last days in the sense it's all over? Or is he talking about, hey, let's just get the hell out of Dodge? And so with that said, let's go to Matthew chapter 24 for a few minutes and see what's being stated by these redactionists. I mean, these redactionists are toying with the text. They have it messed up and using a failed gloss system. And so the church has bought into it. And in the name of Jesus, this is where it's at for most Christians today. And so, are you ready, Bob?
I am ready. And now Jesus left the temple, it says this, and I'm not going to be as polysemous as some might be, but I think it's interesting to note that it begins saying Jesus left the temple. But anyway, so he's walking away with his disciples, and they come up to him and call his attention to these buildings, and Jesus probably takes a look at them and thinks, nice buildings, but you know what? You see all that right there? Guess what? I'm going to tell you something about it. There's not one stone that's going to be left upon another, and every single one of them is going to be thrown down. What a thing to say.
I mean, it's destroying their Mecca. Let's look at it. Matthew 24, verse 1. As Jesus left and was going out of the temple complex, as Bob was stating, his disciples came up and called his attention to the temple buildings. Then he replied to them, and let's do this game, if you will. Is Jesus talking to all Christians today, as so many preachers are trying to say, oh, if you have the word them, it's referring to all of us? I don't agree with that. It appears in the context that this is quite target sensitive, and it could be time sensitive, and let's keep that in mind. He said, then he replied to them, don't you? In other words, the Y-O-U, does that refer to a particular group of people, a handful of people, or does it refer to all of us? And I would argue that it refers to the people that he's actually speaking to. And he says, don't you see all of these things? In other words, I've never seen these things as they were seeing these things. And he says, do you see all of these things? And so we have to actually underline that Y-O-U. Wow, look at that. It's a fascinating word, Y-O-U. Do you see all of these things? I assure you, not one stone will be left here on another that will not be thrown down. And so he's not speaking to me, Bob. He's speaking to those people back in the first century. Or would I be misreading this?
Well, he's certainly asking them to take a look at it, isn't he? You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's keep reading just for a while, and then we'll get into a bit of commentary and possibly a joke or two, okay? Verse 3, while he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples approached him privately and said, tell us, when will these things happen? And what is the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Verse 4, then Jesus replied to them, watch out that no one deceives you. Now, is he playing games with these individuals? Is he being ambiguous? In other words, is he saying, oh, the Y-O-U really doesn't refer to you guys. It refers to people 2,000 years in the future. No, okay, let's read this again. Jesus replied to them, watch out that no one deceives you. Is he talking about the Y-O-U, that these people who are standing around him, these people who are asking him questions? Probably so. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and they will deceive many. And then he says in verse 6, that weird word again. You are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. And so many preachers today are saying, Y-O-U refers to people in this century. And my question would be, is Jesus saying we, that is, of this century, we're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars? Or is he stating people back in the first century? Actually, in particular, these people he's talking to, is he saying, hey, guys, you're going to hear this? In other words, there's a big difference between those guys and us. And so back to the text. You are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you, oh, that YOU again, see that you are not alarmed. Is he telling us, that is 2,000 years into the future, not to be alarmed? Or is he telling the people he's speaking to not to be alarmed? Or is he speaking prophetically? In other words,
I think
draw your own conclusions. Go for it, Bob.
I get the impression this verse is a bit out of well, we're going to look at the English, so but I think that that his disciples were people who were actually looking for, wanting to hear the dramatic news about wars and rumors of war. They were hoping for that. They hated Rome, and so it was a common rumor that, hey, it's about ready to happen. Oh, the rebellion is going to begin. And this is a day in which all Israel is hoping to, and I say all Israel, just Judah, is hoping to break free from Rome, and so. There's a sense here, which I think, you hear wars, about wars and rumors of wars, but don't be chasing after necessarily these alarming things. Anyway, continue on.
Sure, and keep in mind, these are Jews that are looking to try to capture the moment. Are you really Yeshua HaMashiach? I mean, come on. I mean, we need this military-styled Messiah here, okay? Are you really Yeshua HaMashiach? And it's like
there's something
Jesus
that we
is saying,
kind of
I don't get that. And so we're going to go further. What'd you say, Daryl? I didn't hear you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay. Something that we might have kind of skipped over. He asked the question, the end of the age, and I was raised in a lot of this stuff, and that meant to me the end of the world as I know it, or the end of all things. I think age might be not quite equal with what a lot of people think about
No,
that.
not at all. Yeah.
In other words, it might be the end of a covenant, maybe the end of their understanding
Or
pertaining
how
to their
about this?
law.
How about this? Maybe the disciples are saying, okay, so how are we supposed to understand or interpret the moments that now that you are here, things are going to be changing? In other words, we're now entering into a new era. So how are we to know that that's the truth?
Possibly.
I guess I'm really trying to diffuse the text of the drama that is in it and the apocalyptic interpretation. I think that gets in the way it's translated. But
Once again, let's look at the failed meta language again with a big smile. I mean, come on. I mean, it may take strong drink to do this, but
well, let me see if I have any Hal Lindsey
Yeah.
pill.
I mean, for our viewers, if you have strong drink tonight, I mean, take it. You're going to need that through these passages. Verse 6, once again, you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. Wow. See that you are not alarmed. He's not talking about Daryl. He's not talking about Daryl's family. But he's talking about you. He's talking about people he's actually speaking to. Because these things must take place, but the end is not yet. The end of what would be the question? In other words, is this target sensitive? Is it time sensitive? In other words, did all of this stuff happen in the first century? And it's really not a big deal. That is for us. It might have been a big deal for them, but not for us. And why have we been paying attention to these passages when possibly they have absolutely nothing to do with any of the rest of us? And so let's continue to read. For nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these events are the beginning of birth pains. So here we have a bit of, toying around with some things poetically spinned, and it may be taken literal by some, but I don't think so according to the way that it's structured. But let's move on. Verse 9. I don't like this verse, Bob. I mean, this is scary, especially if it has to do with us. I mean, think about this. Then they will hand you over for persecution. I don't like that. So if the YOU is me, I'm going to be handed over for persecution. I don't like that. I don't get into persecution. Do you?
That happened to me just the other day.
I'm um
I'm suffering for Jesus right now. Oh, I'm persecuted. This applies to me. Not really. Read
I
the
was
text.
today.
So the question would be, at this point in time in the story, if we're just taking it just how it's written in this failed meta language, is the word YOU in verse 9 referring to the same YOU that's in verse 4, 6, and so on? Is he still speaking to the same YOU would be the question? Or has he said, oh, they're going to hand you, Daryl, over for persecution? And I think that it's more consistent with thinking that he's possibly speaking to the same group of people.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's keep going. Then they will hand you over for persecution and they will kill you. I don't like this. I mean, I don't want to be killed, do you?
Well, fortunately, this is target sensitive, so it's not talking about me.
Yeah, so we can just forget this. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, Matthew 24, it's not for us. It was for them. Tough luck. You guys had to go through it. I didn't, so good news. Whatever the end is has absolutely nothing to do with me. Wow.
Well, and not to feel as though better them than me, but Jesus is talking to them about what they should be thinking.
Sure. Once again, verse 9, then they will hand you over for persecution and they will kill you. You will be hated by all nations because of my name. Then many will take offense, betray one another. I like all these YOUs.
Mm-hmm.
Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many because lawlessness will multiply and the love of many will grow cold. Wow, it sounds like someone's getting ready to preach a sermon right here. We really needed Jack Van Impe on the program. He could really make this thing scary. You know what I'm talking about, Bob?
Yes. Yes, I do, Jack.
Yes. Roxella. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Daryl, do your best version of Roxella.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful.
Okay. Bob, can you do Chuck?
Um, and now, Dr. Jones will give to us the gospel.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Oh, Chuck is in the background. He didn't wear a shirt tonight, though. Well, Chuck, we're disappointed. Okay, verse 11, many false prophets will rise up and deceive many because lawlessness will multiply and the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be delivered. Some versions say saved.
Mine does. It says
Yeah.
saved.
Saved. Okay, so, saved. Is this talking about physiological salvation? I mean, he's talking about these people being killed. I mean, is this talking about, the sotericness? Oh, it has to do with giving my life to sweet Jesus and confessing all of my sins and repenting and all that kind of stuff that Cy Ten Bruggen Kate wants me to do tonight?
Probably.
I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't appear that Jesus is trying to get these people on their knees. Would that be a fair statement, Bob?
Well, since we're saying that this doesn't apply to us, one of the things we haven't really unpacked is, okay, so if this applies to them, what is he actually telling them? And as we go back to that, I think it'll become clearer. But when he says those who endure to the end will be saved, this is just taking the odd phrasing that doesn't work well in English, meaning, and if you make it to the end, you're still alive.
Well, besides all that, I thought you had to believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, but it just means, if you make it through this, you're one of the lucky ones.
I mean, could it actually be that it was obvious that, you know, the Romans were going to invade their Mecca, their Jerusalem, their
I
holy city? And he was saying, guess what? If this place is going to be destroyed, why don't you sell your property? It's going to be worthless anyway. You
well,
might as well have
know,
some traveling funds to go up into the mountains and enjoy life in a better way. Let's get out of Dodge. Come on.
a military strike is not an easy thing to organize in that day. And yet, as tensions rise, I don't think it was impossible for people who were going to be honest with themselves that the tensions were rising to a point that this is going to happen, and probably at the time this is being stated, we're only, who knows, maybe 30, 35 years away from this event occurring.
Once again, verse 13, but the one who endures to the end will be delivered or saved. This good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed in all the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. What are we talking about? End of what? Verse 15, so when you, wow, that Y-O-U comes up again. Is he still talking to the same disciples? So when you see the abomination that causes desolation, wow, he's bringing in some of that old covenant stuff here. Spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place. And then in parentheses, in my Bible, it says, let the reader understand. Uh-oh. We're talking about, these scribes had something to do with trying to bring some nuance here, possibly. Then those, in Judea must flee to where? The mountains. It seems like he's trying to get people out of Dodge. A man on the housetop must not come down to get things out of his house. A man in the field must not go back to get his clothes. Woe to pregnant women. Oh, yeah. And nursing mothers in those days. Pray that your escape may not be in winter or on Sabbath.
I get
Wow.
the
So
impression.
what happens if you break the Sabbath? I mean, you might have some of your own people trying to stone you to death. I mean, come
While you're
on.
trying to get, yeah, while you're trying to get away from the mayhem, there'll be people forbidding you, yeah, for holiness sake. What were you saying there, Daryl?
Well, I get the impression that if you don't live in Judea, you don't have a lot to worry about. I mean, he's telling whoever lives in Judea to flee to the mountains.
Yeah.
I'm a long way from there. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so consequently, Ukamene, the entire inhabited world is not what he's referring to, but everybody who lives around these here parts.
I really wish Jack Van Impe were on the show. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a timeout just for a moment.
You want to go to scene 10 on the XSplit and let that be rolling while we're figuring this out?
No. We will be with you shortly. Just bear with us.
We just split out this bit. We just run a little video about a dump.
No.
No?
No, we're going to be back up and running, and people can hear us speaking as everything is black. I'm sure they're reading Matthew 24 right now.
Yeah, I'll hear probably in Google.
Well, you guys disappeared on me.
We did disappear.
Yeah, we were talking and suddenly. By the way, I'm getting a FaceTime call from you. Should I ignore it?
Yeah.
Yeah, please
Okay, what happened? Bring us back up, Jack. Okay, what took place was, I mean, when you're talking about, such sensitive material, I mean, we could have blasphemed the Holy Ghost and our names were taken out of the Lamb's Book of Life. And so we lost out on our salvation.
Or maybe
And
it
so
was.
right now, the abomination that causes desolation, maybe that's what's going on. I don't know, Bob. I'm in fear, but I'm going to endure to the end. How about you?
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
So, did we actually stop the broadcast, or did we just continue
No,
on?
the broadcast is continuing. Our fans or viewers or our enemies, they had to endure a little bit of darkness. Possibly they thought that we were thrown out into outer darkness. I don't know.
We
But
could have. We should
suffice
have
it to say, hopefully Daryl's going to come back in a few minutes. But
here. We got him.
okay, we do have Daryl. Hello, Daryl.
We were scared. Bob and I were scared. We thought you had raptured and left us behind.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting, idea here. I mean,
Well, that would have been a great illustration.
Yes.
so it all went black.
Yeah.
Are you ready tonight? Let me give. Oh, okay, give an altar call right now, Bob, while everyone is juiced or.
Okay.
Excuse me, in the spirit, being
here's
wooed by the
your
Spirit of
alternate
God.
call.
Give the altar call. Go for it.
It's an alternate call. Okay, now we are going to return to the lesson. And here is Dr. Jones.
Okay, for at that time there will be great tribulation. Verse 21. Great tribulation. It states the kind that hasn't taken place from the beginning of the world until now and never will again. And so, whatever this great tribulation that Jesus is talking about, this is the great one right here. And so the question would be, if verse 15 is saying, when you see, if the YOU refers to the same group of people that he's been talking to in this particular narrative, then the Great Tribulation is actually happening in their day and time. And so all of a sudden, we don't have to think about being raptured out of here. And maybe it's true that blackness a while ago that we
Can I
went
ask you a
through,
question?
that outer darkness that we went through, maybe we didn't go to hell.
Would it be okay if I crossed out the word the?
Yes,
Then there will indeed be the Great Tribulation. How about just how then there will be Great Tribulation?
certainly.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, there was supposed to be another one after this anyway. There was the great one. At least that's what I was taught.
Yeah, sometimes we have to have a greater tribulation, but unfortunately, it says, let me read this again. For at that time there will be great tribulation, the kind that hasn't taken place from the beginning of the world until now,
Right.
and never will again. Oh, wow.
This
Jack
is
Van
the worst
Impe.
disaster that has
Come
occurred
on.
in Jerusalem since the Babylonian.
Yes, come on, Chuck.
Well, that was,
I mean,
that was my Walter
read.
Cronkite. I'm trying to, but I,
Come on, Chuck. Roxella. Is it Rexella or Roxella?
Rexella.
Rexella. I like Roxella better.
Well, that would be great for the parody. Roxella.
Roxella. Okay, let's keep going. I haven't been drinking anything. Hold on. We're experiencing darkness again for some reason. We'll be back in just a second. Go to some music, Jack. once again, it went black. Maybe this is the second or the third coming or a rapture or whatever. Maybe there is a great tribulation happening as we speak here tonight.
And we
I
went
don't know,
back
Bob. I mean, are you getting frightened? I mean, Google has shut down on us
Yeah.
twice. I mean, we're
I make
using
sure
the
that I'm in the
latest
original
beta
version.
version.
We tried the beta version again. Are you guys in the original version?
No, no, no. What we can do is we can switch up to that. Jack, if you will go to some music just for a moment.
No, you can actually switch to it right away. You don't have to actually switch out of it. You can, the three dots up there in the upper corner, you can just click on that and
Yeah, just switch to something different, Jack, and we'll go to it. Yeah.
Okay.
when you realize how this has been so reinterpreted, and this also was so easy to do because people want to read this text as if it was written to them. And when you stop to think about it, well, if people 100 years ago read it as if it was to them, and we read it as if it is to us, then won't people 100 years from now read it as if it's to them? Then what is it saying and to whom is it saying? Because the truth is, why should I spend my whole life preparing to, as it were, even metaphorically, run into the mountains when the event isn't even going to happen? Not in my lifetime, but can you imagine that? 20 some odd centuries of people preparing for an event that was never going to happen in their lifetime.
But you can't control people unless you give them a narrative of fear. I mean, you've got to come up with a hell. You've got to come up with a tribulation. You've got to come up with a snatching away, like a rapture. You've got to come up with, the great white throne judgment, the judgment seat of Christ, and all of that. If you don't, Bob, you can't control the masses.
Right. In order to control the masses, you have to create an environment of fear. They have to believe that it is utterly urgent that they respond, because only under that kind of response only in that kind of a context do people respond without thinking things through. They're going to be so urgent, they're not going to stop to think, no, wait a minute. Let's think about this for a moment. It ain't going to happen when it's urgent. When it's urgent, you got to get moving now.
That's so true. Okay, once again, pray that your escape may not be in the winter or on a Sabbath. That's verse 20 to verse 21. For at that time there will be great tribulation, the kind that hasn't taken place from the beginning of the world until now, and will
that's interesting that we're going to pray about that.
Yeah, let's pray.
I mean, really, if this is translated as pray that then wouldn't that tend to indicate, even in English, that the word pray was used poetically?
Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a way of hoping. Certain hope this one works out.
Well, unless you believe in the power of prayer, which would mean you can keep it from happening in your lifetime or something, I suppose.
Well, that's possible, but I guarantee you that that when we're in the middle of winter right now up here in New York, but people in Australia are in the middle of summer.
Okay, verse 22, unless those days were limited, no one would survive. We're talking about things happening on this earth. We're not talking about being in heaven. We're not talking about the flying spaghetti monster or Sky Daddy or anything like that. We're talking about limited days so that, some survival would take place. But those days will be limited because of the elect. There's the wonderful word that so many people like to hear, especially Calvinists these days.
Yeah. And
Verse
isn't
23.
it wonderful that God would give to us a lingua franca that actually already had a built-in word to refer to those whom God had chosen?
Special people.
Well, I mean, it's wonderful that they had such a word in their vocabulary.
It's wonderful.
Let me pull that tongue out of my cheek.
And it's wonderful that you had no choice in this. God had already elected.
Yeah, the apple of God's eye. I mean, we've got to remember that.
But I mean, it would be shortened, because of for the sake of the elect.
Sure, God's chosen ones. Verse 23, if anyone tells you, oh, why oh you again? So the question would be, could it be true? Wow, if we look at, these pronouns, are they referring to the same, group of guys hanging around with Jesus? If anyone tells you, then look, here is the Messiah, or over there, or over here, excuse me. Do not believe it. False messiahs and false prophets will arise. And so these guys are still alive while all of this stuff is going on.
And by the way, some people have actually argued that this verse is really misunderstood by the Christian church, and that Jesus is actually telling them, look, when these days of tribulation are coming, they're going to kill me. And there's going to be these rumors that I've been resurrected. But don't believe it. There's some who have interpreted this verse as really being that kind of a confession.
Right. Okay, false messiahs, verse 24, and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, even the elect, the special guys. Take note, I have told you in advance. There it is again. Y-O-U, I told you in advance. So if they tell you, question, is the Y-O-U referring to the same group that he started talking to? If so, isn't this target and time sensitive? So once again, take note, I have told you in advance. So if they tell you, look, he's in the wilderness, don't go out. Look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the carcass is, there the vultures will gather. And so he's pulling a lot of the poetic stuff out of, some other narratives of theology. Let's go through this rapidly just for a few minutes. Verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not shed its light. The stars will fall from the sky and the celestial powers will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. Then all of the peoples of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man, coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a loud trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to another. In other words, talking about metaphor, just buttloads here. Now let's continue.
Neil deGrasse Tyson reads this verse, and he's seen that video where you have the Earth, and then you see Jupiter, and then you see our sun, and then you see this other star. And by the time you're done with this video, you're looking at this huge star that is 1,000 times larger than the Earth. How are these stars going to fall to the Earth? It is either scientifically mistaken or this is metaphoric,
I think you're right there, Bob.
Hello? Yeah.
Okay, let's continue. We've got winds from one end of the sky to the other. Verse 32. Now learn this parable, from the fig tree. As soon as its branch becomes tender and sprouts leaves, you know that summer is near. I'm glad he's so specific here. That's wonderful. In the same way, when you see all these things, when you, once again, YOU, when you see all these things, these guys are still alive, evidently.
And there was nobody who was even told that at this time that any of this was ever going to be written down for anyone else to hear.
Thank
He's
you,
talking
thank you,
to
thank
them.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob.
You
Yeah.
can call it.
I mean, how would they have understood this? And they're not saying, "Oh, wait a minute, we're going to write this down, and other people are going to think you're talking to them."
There
No.
you go.
Jesus is talking to them, and he's saying, when you see these things, know that it's near and at the very door.
I have a
So,
question.
Go
okay,
ahead.
go for it.
Go back just a little bit, and is there a possibility that the elect could be the atheists? And here's why.
I think that the word elect here, I get this impression just from looking at the context and looking at, I get the impression that this word elect had a meaning completely different from the way that theology has treated it. I think that there are certain people in this world who seem to be particularly bright, who seem to be able to read the signs of the times, as it were, and they figure out what's going on. People like, Noam Chomsky, there's just these people, and there's just a select few who seem to be particularly aware, seem to be particularly good at sizing up the situation. And they're hard to deceive of all the other people. And so I get the impression that the elect, that word elect, really just refers to that small group of people who are alive in any given day who seem to really understand what's really going on instead of being fooled like the masses.
And
But
Bob,
does
I'm
anybody want to know why I thought it might be the atheist?
Well, that could be. Many of them would fit in that kind of a category. I didn't hear what you said, Dr. Jones. What was it?
you're not sticking with the failed meta language. I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
get out of the Greek,
This
Bob.
is the people who have been determined to be only the delivered from hell since the foundation of the earth.
But they weren't
There you go.
deceived by the signs and miracles. See, that's why I thought it might be the atheist.
If we're going to talk about the Greek text, one of the things that we do find, if I can leave the conversation that we're having here and talk about the elect, in other words, if you're speaking to a group of people as Jesus appears to be, and you're trying to make them feel better about themselves than they have been feeling, you might use terms that would make them feel like, hey, you're really special. And so
Well,
it could be, wordplay here.
Even in
because-
English, I don't think he's talking about them. I think Jesus is saying, look, you guys are just average, ordinary, dumb people. And there's some people out there who are a lot smarter than you. And even they might get fooled.
There you go.
And I think even in English, I just see that the theology, what it's done with that word elect. I think even in English, we can just throw that idea out. In fact, using the word elect, in my opinion, is one of those examples of taking the root meaning of the word that could mean select and interpreting it into English in a way that tries to remain loyal to the original root meaning, even though the usage of the word was just totally elsewhere.
See, that's a rootstock fallacy thing. I mean,
yeah. So
the church
so
suffers
even-
from that
even in
syndrome.
English, I think you can take that word elect and just think of it as, the smart guys who seem to really get it,
Sure, yeah. Same.
That's my impression.
Okay, once again, verse 33, in the same way when you see. You see. Who would be the you? You see all of these things. Recognize that he is near at the door. I assure you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things take place. Wow. So he kind of limits it to a generation. He kind of limits it to this YOU group. And so, why are so many people disturbed today? That is in theism about, oh, Jesus is coming at any minute, or, we need to be prepared and we need to be ready and we're looking for the second coming. I mean, if this failed meta language is what we need to follow, what are we doing with it, Bob?
Well, we're getting confused for one thing, because if we're going to be honest about the fact that it keeps on saying you, spoken to people who were sitting around. In fact, the occasion of this speech, if you stop to think about it as we got started, was Jesus made this remark about a building. And the disciples are thinking to themselves later, what the hell was he talking about? Let's go ask him. And so this is the scene that we see set up for us, that they're coming to Jesus and they're saying, you said some pretty weird stuff back there about how not one stone's going to be on another. Can you unpack this a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit more? Can you be a little more precise? And so now he wants them to know exactly what he sees, as the inevitable of where things are headed. So it seems to me that even in English, the meta language of the great late planet Earth and all that, it's not even there in English as far as I'm concerned.
I so agree. One of the things that's really strange, it seems like chapter 24 is such an abused chapter that is in its gloss, and yet it's been one of the most entertaining. It has been one of the chapters that has frightened so many people, because so many people teaching on end times have frightened the hell out of so many children. So many adults kept people in a state of confusion, insecurity, and all of that. It just really sickens me. And so I'm hoping that no one here tonight feels obligated to believe any of this. I'm hoping that they can simply see that this is, just a story that someone wrote for the sake of something that might have happened.
Can I ask you another
in a certain
question?
way that might be time and target sensitive.
Let me ask you another question. Let's go back to those buildings that they were talking about. To the best of your knowledge, are any of those stones on top of another today?
Sure.
Is that temple that Jesus was talking about, is that still there?
Well,
I don't think it is.
Well, I'm simply saying that, we haven't uncovered everything. And so,
right. But so my thought is this, that I'm under the impression that in 70 AD that things were terribly destroyed. The city was just ransacked.
Right.
And as a result, how can this be talking to me when I want to know what's going to indicate that this is going to happen, and it's already happened 1,950 years ago? I've got to ask myself.
Okay, now
I have a little late to the party.
I have two answers here. Number one, is it possible that a lot of these ancient buildings, maybe one or two or three stones are still sitting on one another somewhere down deep? That's possible. But here's the premise of what you were saying, and I agree with it. And I've asked this a million times. If all of this stuff was destroyed, in order for someone called you, if this is a modern you would have to go back and rebuild all this stuff in order for it to play itself out.
Yeah, right.
And so why don't we start a building project in the name of Jesus, and then we can get sweet Jesus to come back.
And not
time to do that?
Yeah. Bowling for Jesus.
Building temple for Jesus.
Building a temple for Jesus so we can have him fulfill himself. Yeah, that sounds wise.
Yeah. And,
okay.
we could even make sure that we build this building with a particular kingpin that all you got to do is pull it out and everything falls down.
Okay, now this is the thing that I need to put you on the spot about tonight, Bob, and that's about the theology behind my shirt. I mean, can you give us something prophetically tonight?
Well, let's see. I think that that in that the colorfulness of your shirt is assuring me that we will be actually taken out of this land in time, where we will be protected under the great wealth of some other power and authority, and as a result, we will be saved alive from the famine that is yet to come, and we will end up being great guests of the most powerful in the world. So
Yeah.
that would be my prophetic encouragement.
That sounds a little familiar.
Yeah, that sounds, that really bears witness to my spirit here tonight, Bob.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's a fair prophecy.
Fair assessment.
Fair
I didn't
assessment.
mean to. I don't want to jip you out of any future there. So, you know,
Wow, I've had fun tonight, but I'm kind of over chapter 24. What about you?
yeah. Well, let's maybe summarize what might be really going on here. I really get the impression that first of all, Jesus said there'd be many false prophets. That is, in my opinion, just well, I hate to go back to the Greek. This is not talking about people who come along and say, "I speak in the name of the Lord." This is people who speak forth. There's people who the intelligentsia, the people who try to tell you what's going on, people who try to help you understand. So there's going to be a lot of people who are false prophets in that sense. We have a lot of false prophets today. Most of them are reporters on MSNBC and Fox News. Telling us what's going to happen, and politicians and things like this. Probably we see false prophets giving State of the Union addresses and things like that. People giving us encouraging words about what's going on. Meanwhile, the policies and the behaviors that we have are actually leading to some powerful destruction. So I get the impression that Jesus was someone who realized that he's talking to a group of people who follow him, where he's trying to encourage them to not only be free from a horrible, abusive religion and something that just robs them of any quality of life. And he wants them to know that in spite of the fact that they can find for themselves a better quality of life, some bad things are going to happen, because the way that the current nation is moving is one day going to so stir the ire of Rome that it ain't going to be nice. And so Jesus is trying to warn them to be prepared for it. Don't believe it when people come along and tell you it ain't going to happen. And so I really see in here an extremely sober reality of Jesus trying to tell his disciples politically what the environment is like and what's going to happen and how horribly risky this is going to be. I don't think he's trying to scare them into following him, because this
Right.
is not followed up with a collection or a request for a commitment. So, I mean, it seems like Jesus is trying to warn them so that when they see these things starting to unfold in a way where you can obviously see this is what's happening, they'll realize, oh, we were warned about this, and it ain't going to get better. We had better leave now.
I agree.
So I think that's what we have here.
I think it would be interesting, to say the least, to go through chapter 24 up to this point in Greek as opposed to English, to see, the contrast and place, this what I call the failed meta language of theology here, side by side in juxtaposition with what truly is in Greek. And I think people would have a much different picture here. However, it's been given me a new translation here, and I must read this. Verse 4, chapter 24. Then Jesus replied to them, "Watch out that no one allows you to use the beta version of Google Hangouts. For many will come and say, use that beta tonight. I am the Messiah, and they will deceive you with the beta version, like we've been deceived tonight. You'll be thrown into outer darkness at least 2 times during a show, and you will hear of more rumors and more rumors because of that beta version. So get rid of the beta version this day, I say unto you. Thus saith the Lord thy God." Well, I think we've had a prophet come to NCG Studio who just gave us a word from God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Well, with that said, we're
And
out
was
of
that Jack who told you about that?
Yeah, you didn't know it was Jack the prophet?
If that was Jack, the guy sitting there behind the switcher, then
Yeah.
then what I really should say is, well, thank you, Jack.
Are you sure it's not Van
Oh,
Impe? Is
okay.
that, what's his last name?
Okay, that's not Jack Van Impe behind me, but that's Jack the prophet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I have a prophecy I would like to give, if that's okay.
yeah.
Sure.
Stretch out
I'm
your hand.
glad that I wore this shirt tonight. It's a shirt for representing the University of Texas, which is at Austin, which is just a few miles down the road from San Antonio, where the Alamo was. And I just recently watched one of the old movies about the Alamo, and for the first time, I can really see a correlation between the Alamo and this particular word given by Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
It's in the movie, they are given the choice to leave. There's certain destruction. There's no way they can win the battle.
Yeah.
And a line is drawn. All of them come across it but one. And that one leaves. And I suppose he was saved. But it's very similar to
Not
what
far
took
away from
place.
the Alamo, huh? Where you live? Not too far? Because I've actually been down to the Alamo once.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're about 5 hours from there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you eat on any of the restaurants there on the river there downtown San Antonio?
I don't remember. It was almost 30 years ago that I went down to Texas, and I was there on a business trip for a wildcatting oil company.
Yeah, I mean that is an awesome place to eat Mexican food, to say the least. Oh, one prophetic word. I just caught this. I mean, the prophet, Jack the prophet. He's sitting behind me. He wants me to say this, and he's actually saying this to me. In verse 33, chapter 23, book of Matthew. Snakes, brood of vipers, how can you escape being condemned to hell? I don't know why the prophet's saying that about me tonight, but, he is, and, he's a prophet. He's heard from Yahweh, and so brood of vipers, snakes, I mean, come on. I mean, this is a divine judgment coming from Jack the prophet tonight. And so with that said, we're going to have to get out of here. Go for it, Daryl.
I said that could be worse than outer darkness.
That is true. We've had outer darkness tonight. We've had Jack the prophet speaking behind my back. I mean, there's never been a prophet who would speak like Jack the prophet behind one's back. Remember, if a prophet comes up to you behind your back, wow, you may be condemned to hell like I am. Thank you. Good evening.